So I just finished watching episode 6 of Under the Bridge, and there's a lot to let sink in this episode. There will be spoilers here. If you are not caught up on Under the Bridge, you're probably going to want to save this favorite and come back later so we can talk about it. I'm having a lot of feelings about this episode because there's so much to dig into with Dusty and Kelly and Josephine out by the train tracks and them trying to push Dusty over the edge, which Dusty is teetering on the edge as it is, having a really hard time coming to terms with the truth of what happened. And I think the lack of remorse is really one of the things that's bothering Dusty a lot. I think everyone is having remorse except for Kelly, and Josephine I even think is having a little bit of remorse despite the fact that she is trying very hard to hide it. We dig a little bit into the Rena situation, how she ended up going back home. I think the biggest thing I'm thinking about right now is the end. When Cam is loading Warren G into the car and Rebecca comes running up saying, he's just a kid, you know, he made a bad choice, he made a mistake, he's just a kid. And I've had this thought so many times in my life when I've seen things happen in the news and you hear about these horrible situations. You watch people defend children and young people who've done terrible things. And I agree, it's a tough pill to swallow. The one that I go back to a lot is Brock Turner, which was a case several years ago where a top athlete at Stanford was caught assaulting a woman who was unconscious. It was a violent assault. It was a terrible situation. And he ended up getting 6 months, of which he served 3, I believe, and 3 years probation. And I remember at his trial, his father stood up and he said something along the lines of, why should he pay for a bad decision that he made for 20 minutes? So you're saying something he did for 20 minutes of his life is going to dictate how the rest of his life goes down. And that stuck with me. And I think about it all the time because, yes, it was 20 minutes in his life that he was doing something to someone, that he was ruining someone's life. Because it doesn't take 20 minutes. It takes 1 minute. It takes 30 seconds, depending on what's happening. It doesn't take that long to really, really, really ruin a life. And the fact that his father could stand up with a straight face in front of everyone and say, everyone's blowing this out of proportion. This just isn't that big of a deal. And it just never sat right with me. And I know it's impossible to know how it would feel until you're there. And when you look at these kids on Under the Bridge, they are children. These are 14-year-old children. Tonight's episode where someone said, you know, middle school will be over soon. High school will be over. I was like, middle school? Are these kids in 8th grade? These are 8th graders that unalived someone while intoxicated. Yeah, their brains are not fully formed, and it's a complicated situation. It's a heavy one. I can see why Cam got so mad, and I can see where Rebecca's coming from. But I gotta say, I think I would be Cam in this situation. This show is rough. This story is rough.